Comal County sits in the crosshairs of an intensifying battle between conservation of precious resources and a growing population looking to call the Texas Hill Country home. Its location puts it on a geographical battlefield.
Yeah, it's also home to the longest cave in the state and a cave that's a great example of what's at stake. Recently, Justin Horne and Sarah Spivey were granted special access to that very cave, which showcases the Trinity Aquifer and lies on private property. And in today's KSAT Explains, Sarah and Justin take us inside Honey Creek Cave for a swim, but also to highlight how it now coexists with a fast-growing Comal County.
A quick ride over rugged terrain and private property, it gets us to what looks like the Garden of Eden. A waterfall marks the entrance or exit, depending on how you view it, of the longest and one of the most beautiful caves in Texas, Honey Creek Cave.
It's a major discharge point for the Trinity Aquifer. The cave itself is a significant water source that feeds Honey Creek, which then feeds the Guadalupe River.
Exploration of this state treasure requires a wetsuit, not just because it's filled with water from the Trinity Aquifer, but because the water is a chilly 68 degrees. Today, we'll be swimming.
It's still my favorite cave, and it's still impressive to me. Even after all these trips, it's still an incredibly impressive cave.
Kurt Menking has been surveying Honey Creek Cave since 1980. The cave lies along Honey Creek, just south of the Guadalupe River.
I don't remember exactly how many times I've been in here, but it's well over 200.
He, along with hydrogeologist Gary Schindel, experienced caver John Young, and Helen Ballou, a conservation consultant for the Comal County Conservation Alliance, will be leading Sarah Spivey, photojournalist Adam Higgins, and myself into this aquatic adventure.
We're going to keep an eye on you. We're not going to let you do anything too dumb.
So with that in mind, in we go through a small entry point, and immediately it's apparent. Despite having caved many times, this is unlike anything I've experienced before.
This cave is formed along a series of joints and fractures, and so the cave is linearly extends about 5 miles. It's also relatively unique in the sense that it only has one natural entrance.
It's 15, 20 feet wide, over your head deep for most all of it, and there's formations that come down from the ceiling into the water, so you have to weave your way through them in a lot of places.
There are a number of species in the cave, some aquatic, some terrestrial. There are bats in the cave.
And as we found out, the ever-famous blind salamander also calls this cave home. The water, crystal clear, and halfway through, the cave requires us to go underwater.
When you get up here, push your floaty stuff through, and then I'll give you my hand and I'll pull you through.
It's not a place for the claustrophobic, but if you can brave some tight spaces, chamber after chamber reveals even more beauty.
So Justin and I are 1,500 feet into Honey Creek Cave, about 80 feet below the surface.
And we've made it to this fascinating piece of this waterfall here. If you were to keep going, the cave would go on for another 20 miles.
20 miles.
The waterfall marks 1.5 hours in. From there, we turn back. 3 hours of treading water, and it's not enough to absorb all that Honey Creek Cave has to offer.
Sarah, what'd you think?
Amazing. And the water was so cool. It was beautiful to actually be in the aquifer.
The adventure also underscores just how important caves like this one are to Comal County.
What would happen if you put development on top of a cave like this?
Well, you know, one of the concerns, especially without good environmental controls, is that we would see runoff from the urbanization, you know, oil, grease, heavy metals, etc.
And therein lies the current debate. How to balance a want to live in the hill country with protecting why people are coming here in the first place.
All of Comal County is super significant because it's either over the Trinity Aquifer or the Edwards Aquifer. So almost the entire county is recharge zone for our water supply.
Recently, the land known as Honey Creek Spring Ranch, which is home to the part of Honey Creek Cave we were fortunate enough to swim into and where Honey Creek Spring is located, was placed into a conservation easement, 700 acres worth. A huge step forward for those looking to protect this ecosystem. This kind of easement means the landowners retain ownership, but it can't be subdivided and limits structures. In other words, it's protected in perpetuity.
When the landowner decided that they needed to do this, there was a lot of excitement in our organization because we recognized how important this piece of property was. If they had decided to do the other thing, to sell it, the only people that could have afforded it would have been developers, and we might have houses right up on top of that spring, which would have diminished everything about it.
It was a collaboration between the Nature Conservancy, Texas Parks and Wildlife, and the landowners. Owned by the Moores and the Gosses, this land has been in their family for 6 generations.
Some of the most incredible owners of any cave in this country.
While we weren't able to talk to the landowners, we're told they likely took less money than if they chose to sell to a developer. And at the end of the day, they received peace of mind.
The conservation easement is really special. It will hopefully protect a large part of the cave. Of course, some of our concerns is that the cave is so extensive that the conservation easement doesn't cover the entire cave. And so, there needs to be efforts made to try and protect the entire watershed for the cave.
Which means despite sitting adjacent to Honey Creek State Natural Area, which contains more of Honey Creek, conservation of this part of Comal County may not be done.
There's a nearby one, Honey Creek Ranch, that is still status unknown. Very close to being closed on a conservation easement, but a hang-up over a water contract.
You're not going to stop development, but hopefully with protecting the right places, you can not kill the golden goose.
There could hardly be anything more important to the humans living in this area than to protect our water supply. And by protecting the land over the aquifer, you're protecting the water. And while you're doing that, you're also protecting wildlife.
Rapid growth may have taken Comal County a bit by surprise, with conservation efforts now getting up to speed. But you can bet that development and conservation will be a point of contention in the county for years to come. And regardless of where you stand, one thing is for sure: the natural resources in Comal County are nothing short of stunning. And Honey Creek Cave still has more beauty to reveal.
I've enjoyed being able to explore it all these years, and I hope that future generations of cavers can also enjoy it and continue to add to its survey.
For KSAT Explains, I'm meteorologist Justin Horne.
You can watch any KSAT Explains story by scanning the QR code you see right here. That will take you to the Explains webpage, where you can view all our episodes on a variety of topics, all on demand. Look for a brand new KSAT Explains next Monday right here on the news at 6.